Parrish, Florida in 2024. Nearly 1,274 homes sold from just January to August. That's more than 5 per day, which is higher than fan favorite Lakewood Ranch, new kid on the block Welland Park, Sarasota itself, even cost leader Northport. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly why buyers are finding the unique combination of location, real estate, and lifestyle compelling. My name is Adam Hancock. This is the Florida Relocation Guide, your smartest way to buy, sell, and or invest across all of Southwest Florida, and let's hop in. Okay, the first half of this video, I want to focus on the where. Where exactly is Parrish, Florida, and why should you even care? And for this area in particular, I think it's paramount. The location here equals the value. So what I want to do is three-pronged. First, we're going to look at why exactly is this area trending. Then we're going to lay out on a map, what are we working with? How far is it exactly from everything that you should be concerned with, north, south, east, west, every direction from out of state? And lastly, most importantly, what does it mean? How to contextualize it and what exactly you can do about it. Okay, let's start off the major sections with the idea of geography. And I mentioned in the previous clip that this area is sold more than all these other areas and is doing great year to date. Well, the way that came about was a recent study that I painstakingly went through and I showed on a video a few weeks ago. But it was the Parrish individual zip code at a micro level amongst 40 plus zip codes was number one overall. It's so interesting to me because the relevance right now is I've never seen that on a list as number one. We've been talking about Parrish and beating this drum for a year and a half, 2 years now that it's junior Lakewood Ranch and it's really like up and coming and all this kind of stuff. But for it to rise above all of them and win out, even maybe not counting all of new construction sales recorded and all the pending contracts that are currently going on that you can't even see visibility to, I think is incredibly interesting. And then I go a couple more down the list and maybe you park the Northports and the Port Charlottes of the world that, they're always like the most affordable areas by far. But then you see South Venice, which I talked about last week. You see not just Lakewood Ranch, but you see the furthest part of Lakewood Ranch to town, where if you take all of these together, you're like, these are in different geographies for the most part. They're not even within 10 to 15, 20 miles from each other that are in the top 5 on my list. But when they come together of what's common is that they're all on the fringes of town somewhere. They're all places that are not exactly on top of anything, but they're kind of close to everything. And I think that they're filling a void that people have been seeking for a while now, especially in the Sarasota Greater Metro. That's a very niche market of alternatives. More house, less price. Same house, cheaper price. Newer house where I couldn't have got one or somewhere in between. And Parrish, Florida appears to be the belle of the ball in that conversation right now. Okay, with all of that being said, let's give a quick synopsis of location intricacies. So first off, when you're speaking about Parrish, Florida, to me, this is a northeast Sarasota conversation. You'll see Parrish on a lot of best places to live, especially the last couple of years, best place to live of Tampa Bay lists as well. But if someone that spent the majority of my formidable years growing up in the Sarasota greater area, this is an eastern country part of Sarasota conversation. And I think that's important. It's not nothing, because if you look at it in this order, not the other way around, a lot of the value of what matters here is going to be by going Sarasota and then what's around it, not Tampa and what's around it. The city center of Parrish is going to sit you about 30 miles one way to all the Sarasota stuff, which is it's cool that it's a small conversation. So you're going to go in this direction, maybe opposite camera here, but you're going to go in this direction, 30 miles, which is going to give you downtown Sarasota. It's also going to give you Lido Beach, the bay in between, St. Armand Circle. So you got all the shopping, Cosmopolitan, downtown urban district, all the stuff. Even Siesta Key's 32 miles. So that's like a little radius that you go this direction, you go west, you get it all. But because you're way up here coming down that 30 miles, what that also sneakily gives you, if it's relevant, is the northern part of the county. Because Parrish is in Manatee County, which is like up here. Sarasota is down here. So if you go up north, then your benefit is if it's 30 miles here, it's only 14 miles over to Bradenton. So you have downtown Bradenton, which gives you a whole nother set of beaches. You have the Palmasola suburb, Anna Maria Island, the northernmost tip before you hit to St. Pete, Coquina, Bradenton Beach, Holmes Beach, all of that as well. And then the opposite end of the bookends of the counties, which kind of gives you a quick little education lesson about Sarasota, is the southern Venice-Englewood area, which is going to give you about 38 to 40-ish miles, depending on how far you go down, to get to the rest of the part. So the benefit of Sarasota, if you're from an area now that's larger or is more traffic ridden, then a lot of the mileage we talk about here could be child's play to you. You could be like, oh my gosh, nothing's far. which opens up a lot of housing options as we continue to talk here, because this is a very condensed area. It's very hard to get more than 40 miles to anything. But the last part of that that's really interesting about Parrish that's not like everyone else is because you're way up here, you're also just 40 miles to Tampa Bay, including the main airport, South Tampa, downtown Tampa, all those sporting events. So, if you look at it, you're kind of perfectly sandwiched in between, to me personally, very personal opinion, the best big city in the entire state of Florida and the best small city if you just had to pick one in each category. And one more thing I wanted to mention briefly here as we kind of wrap our geography monologue is the idea of meaning, bringing all this together, because mileage and distance to this or that and the beach and downtown and all of that is cool, but it doesn't have near as much value to me in a silo as it would or as it does if it's contextualized. Because if you're out of state right now and you're saying 30 miles, oh, it's not that far, especially if you live an hour and a half from the beach now, it sounds really good if you just watched a video about Parrish. But there are many, many places just in Southwest Florida alone that are very, very similar on paper. And I think the biggest thing that I would always be worried about if I was advising someone is that it's very hard to determine if you're paying the appropriate price for a house at a given time, you've picked the right neighborhood, you've just made the best decision. That is, I know intimately well your relocation, the heartache it is trying to say, am I guessing right or wrong? Am I going to get here and be disappointed? If you don't know what else you should be comparing those to, so now you're making an intentional choice, you don't actually end up somewhere. And Parrish, Florida as an area is one that especially is in vogue right now because of a benefactor that kind of laid the land or did the dirty work in advance 25 years ago or so. And that benefactor's name is, of course, Lakewood Ranch, Florida, the #1 multi-generational master plan community as we know it today. But if Parrish, Florida is here, Lakewood Ranch is here. So all that talk about coming northeast down and all that stuff, 30 miles, well, in 1995, that was Lakewood Ranch, and that was 15 miles. And when I was growing up, people were like, why would I do that? Why would I go all the way out to the country for this like one little neighborhood, Summerfield, and this Greenbrook, and this stuff they're trying to build? Why would I do that? And you got to think about at that time, too, there was no University Town Center. There was no Fruitville Commons. The way people, when I spoke, used to talk about the Founders Club, lovely golf community. It was even bougier back in the day compared to what else was around. But it was the boonies. You went out and got estate homes in the country, kind of, because there's nothing in between. It was Fruitville and then maybe Mayaca, nothing really else there. And right now, if you look at the geography, Fruitville Commons is closer to any of the communities in all of Lakewood Ranch. Everything was built behind it. So then eventually, as time went on, the first house was built in 95, it's trickling on, then people are starting to get a wider tolerance, saying like, okay, well, I could, there's all this new construction homes out there. That's kind of hard to get in Gulfgate and South Sarasota, especially the urban districts. And, I'm getting a little bigger house and it's a little cheaper because of people's biased opinion of or a real opinion of that it's too far, I don't want to commute into work, or I don't want to do all these things. And then the middle of Lakewood Ranch is built, and the next area they go where they build the high school goes even further from it. So now that 15 miles, that 12 miles becomes 19, 20, 21, but people already had this little bit of time to get their head around that idea. So now they're not saying 22 miles from town, they're saying 7 miles further than the middle of Lakewood Ranch. And then they build downtowns and communal amenities. So folks are saying, do I need to go to downtown Sarasota all the time, or can I use downtown Lakewood Ranch? And now you have Waterside and you have University Town Center. So if I've kind of reinvented the idea beyond the beach, what is my town? Then is it even a sacrifice at all? Or would this have been my primary decision if all was equal? So then if that's true, in the very same vein, if you look at Parrish, Florida again, that puts you 16 miles from the center of Lakewood Ranch, not necessarily always looking at it as a 30-mile sacrifice to Sarasota's town itself. And then you see even deeper examples, and that is the sister communities. So Windward by Neal Communities is built in the lower Lakewood Ranch district. Well, what's Canoe Creek out in Parrish? You see Del Webb, Lakewood Ranch, Del Webb, Bayview, and Parrish. Coulter's master planning stuff. Neal's doing more at North River Ranch. There's Lennar, D.R. Horton, Mattamy. Even the Esplanade communities, the Taylor Morrison communities that are all over Sarasota, all over Lakewood Ranch, Lower Palmetto, which is northern Parrish basically, is doing the same. So beyond the maybe small piece of lifestyle saying Lakewood Ranch is too much Pleasantville for me, I would rather live a little bit more country but also want new, economics alone, it gives you a clear line of sight to say this versus that. And then on top of all of that, when you really lean back and you look at Lakewood Ranch versus Parrish versus other areas, then those other areas aren't that close to town either. So you lean back and you look at Parrish curving, not just northeast, but kind of curving northwest a little bit too. And you say, how far is this actual driving distance to Anna Maria, which I got a little closer to the northern, and to the beaches and all that kind of stuff? And you said, if I drive 10 real minutes further to save $200,000, $150,000, get that pool that's a trade-off in price or something like that, then am I actually taking a junior version, or am I actually leaning in intentionally to an area where I can benefit because of what I'm prioritizing personally for me and my family, where other people are very, very biasly and drastically maybe overvaluing something else? Okay, in the second half of this video, I want to talk about the what. We just went through deeply where this is located. And if that was interesting to you, if it wasn't intriguing, then this is what you can actually get. You know, I'm going to break down the median cost, what you got for that home size-wise, how new that house was. Then we're going to look at the top-selling neighborhoods within that data set, talk about the builders within them to see if that's relevant to you, and then we'll finish the video with what I think is going to happen next. What are the trends going on? What do I think Parrish is going to be in the next 6 months and beyond? So let's get started. All right, next up for this video, let's talk real estate and some of the actual homes you have available to you in this area, if what I just said sounded interesting. So foundationally, those 1,300-ish homes I mentioned, the average price that they sold out over the last 244-ish days was about $500,000, just under. Median lower than that. The average about $500K. That was $229 a square foot. That got you about a 2,200 square foot house size-wise under central air, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and all of those, the average was about a 2020 year-built house. So we have a lot of new construction in this area. Now, if you juxtapose that against some of the other relevant areas, that's South Venice area, which South Venice is kind of a unicorn. It's like kind of this old school boaters community. The average age is like 1970 something. But part of that district and those relevant zip codes is that Playmore district of Boylan Park, which is super new. That's about flat, about $500K too. Price per square foot was higher, so you got a 400 square foot smaller house for that same price, so just food for thought. And then the average year built was 2003, so you can see how much South Venice influenced that. Now it gets more interesting based on my previous point. The furthest part of Lakewood Ranch, the northeast, north of State Road 70, south of State Road 64 of the Lakewood Ranch Master Plan community, 1,100 homes sold, so the relevant percentage data point, $133,000 more on average per house than our Parrish area. So you can see that divide, why it's compelling. $50 plus more a square foot for a similar size house. And then as you go down, it just kind of gets more compelling for Parrish. You know, if you go south of State Road 70 in Lakewood Ranch, the average home was $1 million, and you know, you kind of get the point there. So let that rest for a second. If we talk about individual neighborhoods, so of that same data set in Parrish, what were the most popular neighborhoods? A lot of new construction, like I mentioned, but we'll just kind of rattle them off, and then maybe I'll finish this section with an outlook of what I think is going to happen next, new construction-wise, Q4, Q1, beyond. Most popular community over the last 8 months was a community called Crosswind, and that is a combination right now, at least, of David Weekley and Casa Fresca, $530K average price at $209 a square foot. Second was Bella Laga, which is D.R. Horton. So if D.R. Horton is affordable closer to Sarasota, it's even more affordable in the Parrish area, $417K. Del Webb at Bayview, which I mentioned, which is the, especially in the past, there's the cheaper version of Del Webb Lakewood Ranch. Now there's multiple Del Webbs. There's another new one in Northeast Lakewood Ranch, and there's additional Del Webbs coming out in Parrish as well. But that's an amazing active adult living community, resort style as it gets. If the beach isn't an everyday, under 20-minute kind of commute relevancy thing, this is a great way to get resort style living in the Sarasota area. Salt Meadows was number 4. Number 5 was North River Ranch. That is Neal Communities, Neal and Friends. One of the biggest, it's kind of a suburb within a suburb. This is one of the most trending ideas that's happening, is like everything but the beach in one, not just one community, multiple builders coming together from communal things. Isles at Bayview, which is again that Bayview area. What's interesting about the Bayview area is it's master planned by Coulter Land. Coulter is the builder that built Crestwind, Artistry in Sarasota. Crestwind's a 55 and up, and they play a lot in luxury condominiums, the Ritz-Carlton and the one out in St. Pete and beyond. But the writing's on the wall for Coulter to be a bigger player. So I think that's going to be interesting. It's one of the most luxurious ways to build a house if you don't want to go full custom. I likened it to like a Toll Brothers situation. So food for thought, but Isles of Bayview is multiple builders. Summerwoods is in there. Prosperity Lakes is Lennar. River Wilderness, an old school Bradenton community. If you haven't checked that one out, the average home was built in 2010, but this was bougie back in the day, especially. And for resale, it could be interesting if people made updates. And the average home there is $716K, so you kind of get the point there. But a lot of custom builders back in the day, Canoe Creek, and so you can kind of get the point. But a lot of new construction. Of the list I was going down, the average built house, 2024, 23, 24, 24, 23. So you kind of get the point here. New construction is in abundance. If it's 650 in Lakewood Ranch, it's mid-4s in Parrish. And that, again, would be one of the biggest things to look at when reviewing one versus the other. Okay, and lastly, for our real estate discussion, from a forecasting standpoint, I think there is always that thought that one area is never going to be closer to town than another area. So you always have that kind of border to bump things against from an economic standpoint, lifestyle, whatever it may be. There's always a juxtaposition. We've beat that up plenty well in this video, so I'm going to let that rest. Beyond that, a couple things I think are interesting. One is the trend of folks from out of state seeking more affordable inland retirement. You come to Florida, it's beach, coast, that I'm coming for paradise, I'm coming for the coast. People are trying to hug in Southwest Florida, the West, maybe overpaying and trading for smaller homes and just to get close to the beach with reckless abandon. And we've seen people leaning in the other direction, especially in an area that's so condensed that you do have access to a lot of things regardless of where you live. And you see this all throughout Tampa Bay, which has an infrastructure where if you're not in Pinellas County and you're not in the Tarpon Springs or something, you are inland. So you have areas that are like Wamama and Odessa and San Antonio that are building the Crystalwater Lagoon communities and having 55 and up communities mixed with family friendly and really having every end of the lifestyle spectrum that come together for communal amenities that aren't that far from town, but because of where they're based, where there's a bunch of land to build a bunch of cool stuff, they're also a little bit more affordable because the people that maybe are rushing into work every day and commuting to major urban districts and the people that are coming in to retire don't need that. And they're saying, like, I don't go to the beach now every day. Like, I'm not going to start. And if I do, then when I come 2 weekends a month or 1 weekend a month, the 30 miles isn't too far. They're really winning big when it comes to a price trade standpoint. And that's already becoming a big thing, especially in the Parrish area, which you do see that connection to southeast Tampa Bay as well. The second major thing is just the kind of writing on the wall of what's going to happen. Like all of these new construction things in an area like Parrish, it's very similar with Wesley Chapel. Lakewood Ranch was like very condensed ownership of who had the land. It was a little bit more clear of what's going to happen. Even though it took a while, like you could kind of see it. Parrish seems a little bit more separate. It seems like random communities that are hugging like cornfields of people that already own homes. And there's a little bit of like resistance of who is there already and who's coming there. But the thing is, in my opinion, none of these new construction builders that are massive companies like Taylor Morrison, Neal, these are not small little outfits. To say that they don't know well in advance what's going to happen when they get all this stuff approved, I don't see necessarily, right? Like you build all these homes and you build these 500, 1,500 home communities that take 8 years to build out. They know the commercial districts that are coming behind them, and those plans aren't completely separate from each other. They know the office space that's going to need it. They know the schools that are going to be needed. So if you start seeing, and this is outside of the North River Ranches or the Isles of Bayview where it's one big community that's like has a bunch of things going on. I'm saying if you have 40, 50, 60 communities that are all kind of in one zip code that are all really, really new to each other, at some point, you are going to have a full city. You're going to have Lakewood Ranch. You're going to go and write whatever they call the future of Paris, of whatever, if they call it Lakewood Ranch Extension or whatever they call it in the future. You're going to be able to write that on your address just like you can write Parrish, just like in Lakewood Ranch, you could write Bradenton or Lakewood Ranch. And a lot of the things that are maybe negative as you're early on in these processes, you're early adopting it, like the school districts aren't quite there because why, just like Waterside and Lakewood Ranch, why does Booker High School, the high school for Waterside and Lakewood Ranch, is nowhere near it? It's because it's early. They weren't ready for what's going to happen, but when they are and you build an entire city, then the fragility that comes with being early will no longer exist. And I think foresight could provide a lot of opportunity for people. This is just like if you were shopping Welland Park in Lakewood Ranch, the new district of Playmore. I'm gonna let this rest after this. 2020 late, early 2021, when they were doing the early Toll Brothers communities, some of the early Neal communities, and you couldn't tour anything. There was no models. You had to go to other communities to check it out. You're running over to the old district, you're running over to Venice Woodlands, and you're touring these communities, you couldn't see anything. You got a lot better deals because people couldn't see everything. It was ambiguous, it was vague. Then when people could go to downtown Welland Park and ride around in a really nice tour with like a mini chamber of commerce and they could see everything, the pricing's not the same when people have full visibility and it's more of a sure thing. Most of the money's made in some sort of guess. And on this side, I think it's a pretty safe bet that we know what they're doing, other people have done in the past. So just food for thought. I think it's interesting that the amount of data available with still a big pricing disparity at the moment. So that's what I would say about real estate. All right, my friends, that is a wrap of today's breakdown of Parrish, Florida on the Florida Relocation Guide. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel if you've not already done so. Best way to see what's coming for the rest of the year. And we're gonna try to go at least one video a week, maybe two, every Sunday and Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. So please consider doing that. Beyond that, a couple ways you can get involved. One, free resources. We try to have a plentiful and diverse array of things you can do on your own to further your research capabilities. This could be relocation guide, flip books across all of Southwest Florida, analytical tools like the tool I built that is on the site now that was the backbone of a lot of this video's research. We have a monthly or bi-monthly newsletter that's a great kind of bite-sized report and beyond. So please consider checking that out, thesunshinestateco.com, which is right here, description box below, a bunch of links everywhere. Calling an email directly through the contact form, the email address here, the many phone numbers we have all over the place, is a great way to basically, I found that in my experience, while you're watching videos like this, you're trying to research, you're trying to pick through all the stuff, and a lot of YouTube stuff is like more evergreen. It's gonna be a little bit more macro, not as customized to you as a person potentially. You know, asking one question at the right time can really like shortcut a lot of stuff. You can say, I've already done this, I'm looking at this now, I want to try to be here by this date, I live here now. And there's a good chance that we're doing what you're trying to do already with a bunch of different people that are very similar to you. And or we've done it many times over the last 2 or 3 years, and what we've gained, we can share with you. We have an amazing team to do so as well. So any way that we can help in the Florida real estate market as a whole, especially Southwest Florida, please consider reaching out. We really think the relocation thing is convoluted, but it can be done in a way that's way more pleasant by partnering together. So please consider that. Again, my name is Adam Hancock. You are watching the Florida Relocation Guide, and we'll see you on the next one.